So, as you notice, I have my Indiana Jones outfit on because what occurred after this initial introduction into the esoteric meaning behind these ancient sites and sacred scriptures and these cosmic events that had occurred in my life and my wife's life was a incredible discovery. I started to travel all over the world. I traveled to my first trip was, of course, to Stonehenge and some of the ancient sites there, and I met some wonderful people. And I met a woman there who owned a bookstore and in Salisbury, and I was just talking to her about Stonehenge and the science of Stonehenge, and she said, "Well, I have a book for you." And she gave me a book, and the title of the book was Harmonic 33. And what the book was about was an Australian airline pilot who had had a number of UFO sightings while he was a commercial airline pilot. And what he did was he recorded the sites and locations of these events. And then he started to realize that there was a pattern involved, a grid pattern. And then he talked to other ship masters and pilots that had had similar occurrences, similar sightings, and started to chart. And he discovered eventually that there was this world grid, in effect, where these events were taking place, which led him and eventually me to believe that there was something more to all of this. Okay, and when I was in Stonehenge, I took the degrees of the various alignments there, and I put them on a map, and I traced them out, and lo and behold, they came out to identify perfectly the Bermuda Triangle and the Devil's Sea in Japan. And then with other alignments, I found a grid system around the Earth that looked like a dodecahedra. This was not an accident. I mean, this was nature telling us that there was something going on. Now, I'm not a UFO buff or, an alien nut or anything like that. My wife, my daughter, my late sister-in-law and I did have an encounter with a UFO, I guess, over our old home back in 1982. But even with that, I took on a scientific introduction and interest. And I began to notice that there was a direct correlation between the commentaries in these various ancient sites, especially in the what's known in the Jewish tradition as the Kabbalah. And there's a section called, and I hope I'm saying it right, the Sefer Yetzirah, which is the book of creation. And right there, right in that book, was a mathematical formula that related directly to these alignments that I had found, as well as the mathematics of a lot of the ancient sites, such as Egypt, the Great Pyramid, and Tiwanaku, and throughout the entire world. They all seem to match up with this grid and algorithm system. So it started to lead me to a belief that there was some sort of formula. There was some sort of meaning that this had, and it had to do with creation. And I started to write out different algorithms. I was trying to see if I could figure this out. And I wrote an article for a business magazine, a stock market magazine. And lo and behold, after I write the article, I get a call from a gentleman from Arizona, California, by the name of Dr. Daryl Langham. And Daryl was an older gentleman. He was a geneticist who had been decorated by the Venezuelan government for his work during World War II in saving and generating their crop plants, because they were completely cut off by the Nazis. And he claims that he had some information regarding a system that he had been working on almost all his life. So I flew out and I met him and spent some time with him at his home in Fallsburg, Arizona, Arizona. And he showed me this system, which was actually the geometry of how a cell develops. And it had 3 major parts to it, and then it had 13, those 3 broke down into 13 parts, which was exactly what I had discovered in the Hebrew book of creation and in various parts of the Christian Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, as well as these sites. So we both came to the realization that what these ancient sites and scriptures were coding was a process of creation. And he had discovered that literal creation process within the cell. So this was, to him and I, this was significant. I mean, it was absolutely mind-blowing. And he asked me to work with him, which I did for several years, because he was having a problem in labeling his system. And he knew that I had this understanding of the practical application of it. So we worked together. We did all sorts of conferences and whatnot. We did one in Florence, Italy, a science conference there. And this whole notion of these 13 principles began to fill in. It began to make a great deal of sense to us that we're missing something in so far as how we're constructed, how we think, and what we are. That led to a development of a science between the two of us of understanding, of behavior, of creativity, of organization, which we've carried through to today. Now, I should add that during this process, this 2 or 3 years that I worked with Daryl, I traveled to Egypt twice, actually, and I spent almost a month in Egypt doing research, and had some very interesting experiences there. And in addition to that, I went to Israel, and of course to various parts of Arizona again, and all of these locations were telling us something. They were showing us something regarding this discovery, that there is a lot more that we don't know about. And next, I'm going to talk to you about the science that we developed from these discoveries.